No,
What we're here to discuss is a historic ceremony, event, to discuss the issues associated with Navajo lands. And they're far-reaching. And it's good that our federal officials are here to enter into this discussion. This settlement is not an end to a problem. It's the recognition and the beginning of the dialogue on that problem. So that's what I want to state here from the Navajo Nation, is that this is a beginning and not an end. And why I say that is there are many Indian tribes throughout the United States that are in the same predicament that we're in, having to sue their federal trustee for accountability. And what's the underlying legal principles that form the bases for these lawsuits, for these complaints? That's what the problem is, and that's what I want to point out today. This case is precipitated by the United States Supreme Court declaration in 1823 and the case of Johnson versus McIntosh, wherein the court announced a bedrock legal principle of property law, including the rights of Native Americans to the lands that they occupy and have historically called their lands. The court declared that discovery gave absolute title to these new lands to those that have been acquired or those who made this thing called discovery, which is subject only to the title of Indian occupancy. Discovery gave an absolute right to extinguish the Indian title of occupancy, either by purchase or conquest. The reason I point this out is many of us don't understand that these are the legal principles that we live by today. And they have a direct impact on our daily lives, on our relatives. It's far-reaching. And these are the discussions I think we need to understand that underlie these kinds of cases. And this complaint was filed in the United States Court of Federal Claims on December 29, 2006. And there were many allegations, and there was many prayers for relief. But in the end, we are here to celebrate a settlement. And the settlement, as many of you have heard, is a monetary value in the amount of $554 million for alleged breaches of mismanagement of our trust assets and these lands that we hold dear to us and the resources that are contained therein. So that's what this is about. And I don't think anybody else will say that. So I thought I would bring it up front to say this is what it's about. But going from there, there are still many existing problems that we have. And it's good to engage in these discussions that sometimes back in 1924, all of us were declared to be U.S. citizens. And when that was done, that the granting of some such citizenship shall not in any manner impair or otherwise affect the right of any Indian to tribal or other properties. These kinds of things are still unresolved issues. And that's why, in many cases, we have attorneys and folks that work on these matters for us. And our leaders need to be cognizant and aware that there are outstanding issues also. And at some point or another, we will address those issues also. But first and foremost, I'm here to extend a gratitude of thanks to the folks that made this possible. And many times the attorneys are not acknowledged. And I want to start out with saying that a case like this requires proof, evidence. And that's what the attorneys worked on for years, since 2006, to gather the evidence and the proof, to be able to say, yes, these wrongs should be compensable. And that's what we did with the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. And the former Attorney General, Louis Danetsosi, I don't know if he's here, way back there. Louis was the Attorney General, and I was the Deputy Attorney General when we went to the council to recommend this lawsuit. And we consulted with many folks at the time, including our Assistant Attorney Generals within the Department of Justice. We had long discussions to see if this case had merit. And we also want to extend appreciation to Dana Bobroff, who worked on this extensively, not only from the Nordhaus Law Firm, but also as the Deputy Attorney General from the Navajo Nation. And then within the Department of Justice, we called on the many staff attorneys that we have and our support staff. They assisted in this work to get us to the point that we're at. So I want to thank those folks. And then next, I want to mention the Nordhaus Law Firm, primarily Alan Teradash, who's a recent recipient of the Lawrence R. Bach Lifetime Achievement Award on April 8, 2011. Mr. Teradash directed this effort on behalf of the Navajo Nation for quite a bit of time and engaged in the process we call discovery. And Mr. Don Grove for assisting most recently in the settlement of this particular matter. And additionally, I also want to mention Deidre Lujan, Tim Peckman, and other staff at the Nordhaus Law Firm who worked diligently to pursue this claim on behalf of the Navajo Nation. And last and not least, recently we also called upon the law firm of Buckley Sandler Law Firm to assist in this particular matter also. And that was due to certain circumstances, but nevertheless, we needed to pursue this particular matter. And we want to thank Mr. Sam J. Buffone, who worked tirelessly for many years on behalf of the Navajo Nation, not only in this particular matter, but in the racketeering case against Peabody and the owners of Navajo Generating Station for many years. And as many of you know, in companion cases, there were plenty of heartbreak, so we knew the challenges of pursuing an action like this. But nevertheless, these folks persevered on our behalf. And I'm sad to say that Mr. Buffone is not joining us, but he may be listening in on the phone. So hopefully he's doing that. And then we want to thank Andrew Sandler for his efforts on behalf of the Navajo Nation, and Christopher Regan, Brian Kelly, Augustine Ripa. And some of these names are difficult for me to say because I'm wondering how to say that. Vina Viswantha, I believe is the way you would say that. And I previously extended appreciation of thanks to the Department of Justice and to many Navajo Nation divisions, departments, programs, offices. As we pointed out, Mr. Ashley was instrumental, and we counted on or called on many staff people within the departments, within the offices, to help us and the discovery effort to gather information. And I want to say that that's what this case is won on, is the evidence. And that's always the case, and it takes a long period of time. And lastly, I want to extend gratitude to our policymakers and our leaders who believed in this effort and funded it and authorized it and helped us to pursue it, to the many council delegates who assisted in this effort, and the president, Ben Shelly, and the previous presidents who believed in this effort also. So, thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Y'all having a good time? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President and visitors, distinguished guests, for making this a monumental occasion for coming out here today. Aro le mai thoi holi de are ya he nasha aro ani de ya he ko de ji tha sla ba na shani ki mai thoi do sa sa an do na that si do aro te ni thoi do kin ke ye de are ya he de na ba na sha aro kare ya he tha de ya he da na ta aro ni de ya he not need that, as it's no way he's another east to the core. Yeah, he just did all this. That's not Tagi, Sinedo, Sigero, J. I want to thank the members of the Washington group that came here today. It is indeed responsibility of the United States government to acknowledge and make an effort to make past historical mismanagement of our resources whole again. And that's what we were organized. When I say we, Task Force and Navajo Nation Council, we were organized to manage a lawsuit against the United States government. And in the course of managing the lawsuit, we were also asked to engage in settlement discussions with the United States government. And we couldn't have accomplished this settlement without help from a lot of folks within the Navajo Nation government. We also, we heard earlier about our attorneys that help us tremendously with their legal abilities and able to negotiate and persuade the United States Department of Justice, to see what we wanted in our negotiation. And so the folks that help us tremendously, that this is the only way that you can advance a litigation claim against any party is through your evidence, as mentioned by Harrison Sosi. That is the paper documents. This was a litigation of documents, testimonial documents. Without our workers and Navajo Nation employees being able to generate and recoup these testimonial documents, we would not have had a settlement. We would not have had a settlement this large. So my hats off to the Navajo Nation employees for stepping to the plate and making this settlement possible. Yeah, without them, without their documents, we wouldn't be here today to celebrate this. Go ahead, once again, thank you very much. I want to introduce the task force members. These task force members were a feisty bunch of hardliners. There were times when I thought that we would that negotiation with the United States government would fail because of the hardline positions that they took with respect to the negotiation. Through the efforts of Dana and our attorneys, we were able to revive what I thought were impasses in negotiation. But I want to acknowledge our task force members. Roscoe Smith, would you please stand up, please? Roscoe was my vice chairman. Second, Russell McGay. Charles Damon in the house. Walter Phelps. Alton Joe Shepard. Dwight Witherspoon. Last but not least, Leonard Sosi. We also like to acknowledge Madam Chair, Catherine Benali, for being part of our group as well. She came in and provided some insight into our discussions as well. I want to thank you for honoring to be your chairman. You guys did the work along with the employees. I was just an umpire. John Roberts said, as judge, Supreme Court judge, you almost have to be an umpire. You know, you don't go to the ball game to watch an umpire, right? There are other more important players on the field. But I was just your umpire, and you guys did the work. So thank you very much, task force members, for making this enjoyable negotiation and enjoyable litigation. Back in the 20th council, some of you were my colleagues then. We sat down and talked about federal trust responsibility. We knew that there was a problem. We knew that enforcing trust responsibility was a big task. Were we up to it? Was the Navajo Nation up to it? We had some hardliners on the 20th Council. I think part of their position was gleaned from their experience in the 70s with the AIM movement and other hardlines group that dominated the scene at that time. But one of the things that we sat down to do was to provide money such that litigation like this can go forward. I don't know if Irvin Kieswood is in the house. Irvin Kieswood played a big role in establishing the trust risk management litigation trust fund. He helped us establish that trust fund such that we would be able to afford. Money will not be an issue. In any litigation, money is always an issue. But with the Navajo Nation, we sought to correct the wrong. We sought to establish a trust fund such that we will not, at the end of the day, will not be just looking in. We'll be an active player in making sure that the United States government stands up to its trust responsibility to Native tribes. And so you see how that has worked in this settlement today. So we thank you very much for helping us. Thank you for task force for allowing me to be part of this litigation effort. And thank you, Washington representative, for being here today. And thank you all for being part of this celebration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clara. Gada, bine Jay Lorenzo Bates in here. Chenja kin nanish deja touching he washes chin. Kiana de che nakai de chanela. And I represent 6 chapters from the other side of the mountain. And every time I say that, I go, if you do it twice, it's too far. As Speaker Pro Tem of the 22nd Navajo Nation Council, it is an honor, a great honor to welcome our guests, including chapter officials, tribal, state, and federal officials. And most importantly, our Diné citizens. With us today and with those watching live on the internet via Ustream. Many of you travel a great distance today and devoted your valuable time to be with us today to mark this special occasion. We are here to celebrate an understanding we have reached in order to remedy, as so eloquently spoken this morning by Madam Secretary, the wrongs of the past committed against the Navajo Nation and the Navajo people. As sovereign nations, we reach a settlement to resolve issues in order to move forward in our relationship. Not only today is a historic agreement, but it is also an agreement between the Navajo Nation and the United States that signifies an opportunity for our Navajo people. It presents an opportunity in such a way for our government and our people to work together to determine how the benefits of this agreement can help and will help our nation to prosper now and in the long term. In recent weeks, many of our Deneb citizens have asked how the money will be spent, how it will be used, and who will benefit. First and foremost, I want to assure our Navajo people that you will have your opportunity to share your thoughts and your recommendations as to how the nation can best utilize these funds when the public hearings are held. And our first public hearing, which will be held October 6th in the community of Chinle, Arizona. Secondly, I want our people to know that there are procedures and provisions in place to ensure that the funds are secured until a careful strategy is in place and implemented. Our nation has many immediate needs, including scholarships, road development, housing, renewable energy developments, infrastructure development. The list goes on. But on the other hand, there's also that need to sustain our nation and our people for generations to come. It will be a true exercise of our nation's sovereignty as to how we determine the use of these funds. It is my belief that our nation's leadership will see to it that it benefits all of our people for the years to come. Yes, we the Navajo people are resilient people. So it is fitting today to coattail the world community furthering their commitments to protect, respect, and remedy human rights of all indigenous people. I am proud to say that the Navajo Natanis at this table have worked hard, respecting the differences between the Navajo Nation and the United States, but building on common interests. I commend each of you for your devotion and the hard work that you all put in. Not only the Navajo Nation Council, but the members of the United States government in moving this forward. So with that, we look forward to capturing these opportunities as a result of the settlement ahead.
My name is Kevin Washburn, and I'm a law professor on leave from the University of New Mexico School of Law. And I am very proud to be here today. I'm proud to be part of a faculty at the University of New Mexico that has graduated more than 75 Navajos with law degrees. And several of those are here in the audience. Council delegates Leonard Sosi and our state district attorney Carl Gilson is back there, and Bette Becker was here earlier, and Angela Finale is here, and several others. It makes me very proud because today actually is a day in which, to some degree, the lawyers are the heroes. Lawyers, you know, they fight, they learn to fight for their people, they fight for their clients. And they do that well, but they can also find agreement. And today we celebrate, in part, the fact that the lawyers and the leadership found agreement so that we can move forward together. For me personally, today is a day of celebration. I came here today not as a law professor, of course, but because I'm the Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs in the Obama administration. The Secretary and I, and all of the federal government, have a trust responsibility to Indian people and Indian nations, including the Navajo Nation. And in that role, we find it hard to serve people well as trustee when we're simultaneously fighting with them in litigation, in court. How can I serve as a trustee and how can I serve people while I'm simultaneously fighting people? It doesn't sound like it would work, does it? Well, it doesn't. And it is sometimes easier to fight, to be quite frank. It's easier to fight. We Indian people have learned how to fight. Sometimes it's easier to fight than it is to cooperate. But I can't serve Indian people well if the United States and Indian people are fighting. We have to move beyond that. So we asked our lawyers to try to find a way to settle our claims, our cases against tribes. And Navajo is the biggest of these settlements, as is appropriate, because you have the largest reservation in the country and the most trust resources. But we have also settled around 80 cases with other tribes across the United States. And that's important too, because we serve as trustee to those tribes as well. So, today is a day of celebration because President Obama told us to try to serve Indian country better. And this is a demonstration of that. Today we are celebrating Indian country better, and we are doing so because the lawyers and the leadership here at Navajo compromised with us, and I want to thank all of you because you're going to help me do my job better in serving everyone in Indian country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am deeply honored to stand here today with the leaders and members of the Navajo Nation and my colleagues from the Department of the Interior to share in this momentous occasion, one that marks a new era in the enduring trust relationship between the United States and the Navajo Nation. I want to thank President Shelly and all the tribal officials and members who joined us today. Thank you all for welcoming us to this incredibly beautiful place that is your home. I'm also delighted to be here with Secretary Jewell and Assistant Secretary Washburn, who are leading great efforts to support and strengthen American Indian tribal sovereignty and to fulfill the historic trust responsibility of the United States. For decades, the United States and Indian tribes have struggled, sometimes side by side and sometimes at odds, to resolve with finality long-standing problems related to the United States management of tribal funds and resources. In that context, the Navajo Nation pursued its own claims for past failures, most recently in a lawsuit raising federal deficiencies that spanned decades and addressed the entire breadth of the Navajo Nation's funds and resources. But that litigation, unfortunately, stood in the way of furthering the relationship between the United States and the Navajo Nation. As the novelist James Baldwin once wrote, "People are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them." In some ways, this statement might characterize the greater part of the historical relationship between the United States and Indian country. But today we come together to move beyond the worst parts of that history and to embrace the future. The Navajo people know this history as well as anyone, beginning with the long walk when your ancestors were forced to march away from this beautiful home to an internment camp in the Bosque Redondo. In 1868, once that proved to be a failure, the Diné returned to their homeland under a treaty with the United States. But the cycle of history continued, with promises made and promises broken. And in many ways, American Indians became trapped in a cycle of distrust, disenfranchisement, and disappointment. As my boss, Attorney General Holder, told tribal leaders last November at the White House Tribal Nations Conference, far too much of our history has been defined by violence and deprivation. Far too many promises have been broken. Far too many tribes have been told that their lands, religions, cultures, and languages were somehow not theirs to keep, that their rights could be abridged or denied without the guarantee of due process, that they could not vote, and that the only course of action available to them would be to move on, to give up, and quite simply, to forget. But in the last 5.5 years, under the leadership of President Obama, Attorney General Holder, and Secretary Salazar and Jewell, we've seen the dawn of a new era of unprecedented partnership, of unparalleled support and respect for tribal sovereignty. Today, by providing fair compensation for the Navajo Nation's breach of trust claims, This settlement will provide substantial, tangible benefits to you, the Navajo Nation. These benefits include monetary relief as well as commitments by the United States government to improve the way that we carry out the trust relationship with the nation. This resolution, however, benefits not only the Navajo Nation, it benefits all Americans. By amicably settling these claims on terms that are fair and reasonable, we avoid the expense and drain on federal resources resulting from unnecessary litigation. There are so many people who deserve recognition for achieving such a meaningful resolution. I just want to name a few of them, though. Most importantly, I'm immensely grateful for the hard work of the Navajo Nation, for President Shelly, Attorney General Sosi, Deputy Attorney General Bob Ruff, and the nation's outside counsel, who engaged with us in meaningful mediation of the nation's claims and worked towards a successful settlement. I'd also like to thank my colleagues at the Interior Department, including Secretary Jewell, Assistant Secretary Washburn, Acting Principal Deputy Solicitor Jack Halgrid, and Acting Director of the Solicitor's Indian Trust Litigation Division, Ken Dalton, who's here with us today. The commitment from Interior at the highest levels to resolve tribal trust claims expeditiously has been reflected in the hard work and dedication of countless Interior Department staff. Finally, I'd like to thank my predecessor, Bob Dreyer, the Chief and Deputy Chief of our Natural Resources Section, Lisa Russell and Jim Jett, and the other dedicated attorneys in the Justice Department's, the U.S. Justice Department's Environment and Natural Resources Division, who worked so hard to reach this historic settlement. This settlement is yet another significant step toward closing a long and difficult chapter in our history and demonstrates this administration's unwavering commitment to moving forward through a more constructive relationship with all Native Americans. In that context, I look forward to working with the Navajo Nation and its leaders and members to achieve our broader shared goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire, and what a great day to be here. I should start by saying, Ya'ate abene. There's no better place to be than Window Rock on this beautiful day. There's no better place to be than in the presence of the Navajo Nation and the Dene people. Thank you so much for the warm welcome here. Leadership. Leadership is about embracing change and moving forward. We have behind us on the podium and the people that have been recognized from the Navajo Nation, from the Department of Justice, from the law firms, from the federal agencies and the agencies of the Navajo people, leaders who are committed to moving forward. So I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all of you because change is difficult. Leadership is difficult. Leadership is the only ship that doesn't sail into a safe port during a storm. And we've had some storms here in Navajo country with the U.S. government, storms that have gone on for a long time. And this is a time for a beautiful sunny day. It's a time for calm winds. It's a time to look forward and to work together. Many people have been recognized. I will spare you going through all of their names again. I do want to particularly call out all of the lawyers that worked so hard on this. And as Kevin pointed out, it's not often that lawyers get celebrated and recognized. So I would just like every lawyer who worked on this settlement, whether for the Navajo people, for private law firms, or for the U.S. government to stand up so we can give you all a round of applause. Thank you all so much for your work. I particularly want to call out my colleague Ken Dalton on the stage. He won't be speaking, but he has been the lead counsel in the direct negotiations for the Department of Interior, and he's been ably supported by Dondre Maiden, who's sitting right here, who's the attorney advisor for the Indian Trust Litigation Office. These are hard jobs, and they involve conflict, and they involve long hours, and lots of time, and lots of compromise. And if you're working in federal government service, just as you're working in probably in Navajo government service, it can be a thankless job. It can be a job where people tell you everything you're doing wrong, and few people tell you what you're doing right. It seems to be consistent in government jobs the whole time. And I just wanted to call all of you out for your hard work. I also want to thank Dr. Peter Zinza, the former president of the Navajo Nation, who worked alongside many other tribal leaders on the Secretarial Trust Commission. He provided me with strong recommendations on how we could improve relations with Indian country across the United States going forward, and formed the basis of the most recent secretarial order that I wrote, which directs all of our interior agencies to step up their game. to make sure that the kinds of challenges that we've settled through this litigation don't happen in the future. Because, as so many people have said, we have a history that's painful. We have a history of broken promises. I've been studying that history as I've taken this job, and I've been a student of it over the course of my life as a banker doing business with a number of tribes. And it's not a proud history. And it's not easy to uphold your trust and treaty obligations as you're working with a Congress that approves your budget. So part of the strength of this landmark agreement and of 80 other landmark agreements with tribes, with a handful more to go, we are starting a new chapter in relations with Indian country that I am very, very proud of. And I hope that as the generations being born look forward, it will be a very different relationship that we have between the U.S. government and the sovereign nations of Indian country, the largest of those being the Navajo Nation. Government-to-government relationships are how we go forward. Self-governance and self-determination for tribal governments like those sitting before us today are our way forward, because you know best for your people. The U.S. government does not know best for your people, and we have some work to do. As I said in our meeting this morning with tribal leaders, my favorite book as a business person is called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. It's about working around bureaucracies. All governments have bureaucracies. The bigger we are, the more bureaucratic we get. And so we do share some of that between the Navajo Nation and the U.S. government. And I think we all have work to do to knock down some of those barriers. Because what we really want to do is empower Native communities, empower Navajo communities. Not spending money on litigation is going to empower Navajo communities by more money going into the things that you care about, like farming or mineral development or business or rights of way or housing or education or all of those things that you care deeply about. It empowers you to embrace your culture that is filled with pride, is filled with history, is full of a beautiful language that helped the United States and the world win World War II through your Navajo Code Talkers. Thank you. And may those that left us in the last year of the 10 rest in peace, but they served their country with distinction. So I just want to reiterate something that Sam Hirsch said when he was up here from the Department of Justice, and Kevin Washburn said as well. I work for a great guy. President Obama cares deeply about Indian country, and his visit to North Dakota, to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, was a powerful one that will impact he and his wife for years to come. His administration, my predecessor Ken Salazar, worked very closely with Indian country to settle the Cobell litigation, $3.4 billion, a historic litigation, the largest class action lawsuit in our history, and something that helps right a wrong of the past. And thanks to Eloise Cobell for her tenacity in making that happen for all of you. And the second checks, I understand, are in the mail or have arrived, and that should make a few people smile out there. I also will say that this came up in our meeting a bit this morning, that one of the biggest challenges we have, you have in Indian country, is fractionated lands, is the ability to do things with the lands that you have in the reservation because of the fractionated ownership. So we have really committed ourselves to the land buyback program and taking land into trust for tribes so that you have the authorities to do what you need on those lands and you're not trying to chase down all those owners. We're working on that collectively, and we look forward to getting that done. We have 270,000 acres of land as of today. That's 5,000 more than when my notes were written a few days ago, which is good. We're making progress. That's since the launch of the program last year. I'll also say that I'm enormously proud to have been asked by the President to chair the White House Council on Native American Affairs. So what is that? I'll tell you what it is. The U.S. government is big, as you know. I think it's the biggest enterprise on earth. And each of us run pretty good-sized enterprises ourselves. Department of Interior, 70,000 employees. And each of us has our own silos. Bureau of Indian Affairs, Bureau of Indian Education, BLM, National Park Service, USGS, and I'm just talking about a few within Interior. And every one of the agencies has its own silos. And so oftentimes the commitment that we have as a federal government to Indian country gets lost. Less lost, perhaps, in the Department of Interior because of our primary relationship in upholding trust and treaty obligations. But the White House Council on Native American Affairs is the place that my colleagues convene together and hold hands and commit to moving forward in a more cohesive and comprehensive way to support the needs of Indian country. So when we have a need for teachers in the schools, we can coordinate on housing because that may be a barrier to getting that teacher to take the job that he or she signed up for. When we have the Department of Justice build justice centers, we want to make sure that the Bureau of Indian Affairs has the resources, or the tribes have the resources to run them. These are some of the things that we experience on the ground that we have got to solve. So the President has set up the White House Council on Native American Affairs. He's had the Tribal Nations Conference every year, recognizing all of the tribal sovereign nations of the country to come to meet with him, to meet with us. And our job with 2.5 years remaining is to make sure that we deepen the relationship with Indian countries so no president coming after President Obama, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, can undo the good work that we've started forward, because we need to move forward in this next generation. So it has been my pleasure to be here. It's going to be my pleasure to visit the Crystal Boarding School a little bit later on today as we commit to working alongside you to create a brighter future for Indian children, a future that provides an academically rigorous education and a culturally appropriate education that celebrates and honors your language, your culture, and hopefully builds a generation of young people who are very proud to speak your language. So in closing, I will do my part and try and say thank you. Yahe. Thanks, everybody.
You know, it's really a nice day in Junoko. After summer's ending, fall starting, harvesting. Northern Fair this year. Belasana do nenda nest anigishi that the things are the Northern Fair. You know, you think about the fall and the harvest and the settlement is coming, the timely period, you're seeing it here. This is a settlement on a harvest day. And the people is going to be welcoming this harvest and things that they wish for, and when it's done, will be done. So, again, Mr. Zaw, thank you for being here. Your shoes is real big, but I think we're about 200 plus ahead of you on this. When you brought in money, it was 225 million. We got 554, so I was saying that a while ago. So. But your investment was wise. I hope we do the same thing with this 554. Instead of throw it up in the air. Secretary Jewell, welcome to the Navajo Nation and for being here. And all you dignitaries here. Kevin, I still need you to visit HPL, Hopi Petition Land, someday. Maybe the next administration will give you a tour on that. You need to see how Hopis are treating Navajos. And the Attorney General, all the lawyers, and also my staff, Executive OPVP, thank you for helping me, and thank you for keeping me up to date and everything else. Dana, thank you, my dear. All right. Thank you, thank you. There's not much more to say for that lady. Sometimes he gets me mad, but so that's the way working relations supposed to go. Today we gather as a nation to celebrate the historic trust settlement agreement between the Navajo Nation and the United States government. Am I correct? This money will not be appropriated every year. It's separate funding. So we don't have to worry about the old language of the federal government, availability of funding, depending on availability of funding. So this money will be put in a separate fund, will always be there. That's what I heard this morning. So that I welcome that. For decades, the Navajo Nation had a fighting relationship with the Department of Interior. And I hope it ends today. I hear soft government, soft determination, and more recognition to recognizing the Navajo Nation as what they are, a nation, a growing population. The needs are, supply and demands are short. We need to work on that. With this settlement, like our working together on the Navajo Gallup water supply projects, renewable energy development, the Navajo Nation and the federal government are moving ever so slowly to a true partnership to solve our problem and our difference. Please go a little faster. put into the next gear because our young people are here at the door. They want to be involved in the government. They want to have jobs. They want to have what the American dream's all about. So kind of maybe go to another couple of gears, move it far faster so we can move forward. Today marks the close of our legal battle, which began in 2006. I was a young delegate then. I was a part of this. I was over there in that roundhouse over there when this was all going on. The Navajo Nation sued the federal government to settle claim for the mismanagement of some of our trust assets or trust funding. The $554 million represents in the settlement is more than just the end of a legal battle. It is not just fulfilling the trust responsibility of our trustee, nor is it full compensation for the loss of revenue and the harm caused by the federal government action over decades. This settlement marks a turning point in our relationship with the federal government, and I'm hoping to see that before Obama leaves. You know what? I'm the one, being the vice president in the past, the last term, I had the one that endorsed him when he went to South Dakota. And you know what? I asked him almost every day to come to the Navajo Nation, but where did he go? North Dakota, right? Yeah, you know, I could have got, past the primaries. He came over here. But I came in number 7. This settlement marks a turning point in our relationship with the federal government and the Navajo Nation's ability to provide hope for our people. The money from this settlement will provide us with the ability to deliver service infrastructure and development, as you have heard from Mr. Bates on what he's going to do with this. This means that we are taking one small forward self-sufficient and away from dependency on the federal government so much. The way forward for the Navajo Nation, as with all Indian country, is to develop our ability to stand on our own and rely less on the federal government to provide for our people. It is important to note that a lot of work went into reaching this multi-million-dollar landmark settlement. The Navajo Nation worked for many years in long and tough negotiation to come to a resolution on this issue. The Navajo Nation thanked President Obama and his administration for settling this long-standing wrong to the Navajo Nation, the Navajo people, for this commitment to working with Indian country. Getting to this day demonstrate extraordinary leadership from our Trust Litigation Task Force, and the Navajo Nation extends gratitude for their tireless efforts and guidance in bringing this matter to a close. The need across the Navajo Nation are great. Gosh, it's great. So I wish I could cover most of it. That's only the tip of the iceberg that he talked about. The next step following today's signing ceremony is to hear from the Navajo people. Navajo people, if you're out there listening, speak up. How do you want this money to be spent? We urge the Navajo people to provide their input on this important issue that will affect generation to come. Generation to come. What is it? What's your voice? Earlier today, I got a call. A lady called me and said the president should not sign that the settlement, without me saying yes or no to that. That's what the phone call came in. So, again, these kind of people are out there. They don't see the future. You look around you. Younger generation, your grandkids is right here. They want work. They want something done. Secretary Jewell, thank you for coming here today. Thank you for helping to bring this chapter to a close. Thank you very much. Kevin, so is you. I hope we can continue to move forward as partners to serve the Navajo people. Wow. The first politician, I'm making this short within 5 minutes. Okay, thank you, Cash. I don't should talk it, Limi, Schno, the Schneedo, Ice Guinea, Bashishin, I don't my wife, it up by Twitchini, Yashin with Anhanit, Ajoko. But then again, to the Navajo people, I honor for serving you and this great Navajo Nation. I honor it. Thank you. Thank you.